The twin suns of Verian set the alien capital aglow, their light refracting off chrome skyscrapers and floating highways that hummed with life. Among the bustling Verians, silver-skinned, graceful humanoids with eyes that glowed faintly in shades of jade and amethyst, walked Sila, a young researcher who drew lingering gazes with her rare beauty. Her silver skin shimmered beneath the warm rays, and her dark hair, tied in a high ponytail, swayed with each purposeful stride. But today, something stirred in her mind, something that had weighed on her heart for weeks. Sila pushed through the door of her favorite cafe, where Luca, the bright blue-skinned barista, welcomed her with a grin. "Sila, the usuals?" She nodded with a smile, but her mind drifted as she held the warm drink in her hands. Her focus turned inward as she thought of the test she had received just days ago, the life-altering diagnosis that loomed over her like a storm cloud. She'd seen the pity in the doctor's eyes, the hard truth etched into their expressions. She was terminally ill, her condition an incurable anomaly in the Verian genome. Her body was degenerating from within, and Verian laws demanded euthanasia once a critical threshold was reached to avoid prolonged suffering. But the very thought of surrendering terrified her. Sila wasn't ready to fade. She longed for life, even for just a taste of what she had yet to experience. And one thought obsessed her in these final days. The one thing Verians did not do, the act of creation through human-style reproduction. Her people had advanced beyond such primitive means, cultivating new life in sterile, efficient pods. But humans did it differently. They connected in passion and intimacy, creating life through an act that was rumored to be raw and beautiful, unpredictable and personal. It was her final, unlikely wish. When her seizures worsened, Verian medics arrived, steadying her as she lost consciousness, the sounds of the world fading into a hollow silence. Sila awoke in a sterile hospital room, surrounded by the worried faces of her family and doctors. Their voices were heavy with resignation as they discussed the euthanasia process. But Sila could not give up. She needed to try one last thing, to push her people's boundaries as she'd always done in science. She voiced her request boldly to the medics. "I wish to experience human reproduction before my time is over," she declared, her voice weak yet unyielding. The doctors exchanged wary looks. Sila's request was unprecedented. Verian culture had long abandoned biological reproduction as outdated, yet Sila's status as an esteemed researcher afforded her some leeway. Dr. Vox, her primary physician, frowned in contemplation but, after a moment, nodded. "We'll need to speak with the Galactic Council," he said slowly. "Such a request, it will need permission." His gaze softened. "But if they agree, it's possible." The council deliberated for days, debating the implications of Sila's request, the ethics, the potential repercussions. Sila's spirit remained resolute. This was not merely a curiosity, but a last attempt to connect deeply, to feel in a way she could carry with her beyond the boundaries of her existence. After tense waiting, approval was granted. Sila's heart raced with bittersweet excitement as she met Ryden, a human volunteer who'd traveled from Earth, drawn by her story. He was tall and calm, his brown eyes warm with empathy and understanding. In the secluded, comforting environment prepared for them, he sat beside her, holding her hand. "This is not just about life creation for us," he whispered, as if understanding her inner thoughts. "It's a connection, a moment of shared vulnerability, of choice." The intimacy they shared was like nothing she'd imagined. Every touch, every whispered word, was a step into unknown territory, and yet it felt like coming home. For a moment, she was no longer Sila the researcher or Sila the terminal patient. She was just alive. In this tender exchange, she found a depth and purity that transcended all the sterile labs and clinical chambers of her past. The connection was electric, a memory she knew would blaze in her consciousness forever, even as her time dwindled. Days later, as Sila lay in her hospital bed, she clutched the warmth of that memory, feeling it pulse like a heartbeat. The disease progressed swiftly, her body weakening by the hour. Yet, she felt an unparalleled peace, a sense of fulfillment in her soul that no scientific breakthrough had ever given her. She had lived as she wished, defying the limits set upon her. Her family gathered around her as she neared the end, their faces etched with both grief and admiration for her courage. Sila's gaze softened as she held her mother's hand, her final words a whisper of gratitude and hope. Life was beautiful, and with that, Sila drifted into a stillness that felt neither like an end nor a beginning, but a continuum, colored by a memory of human warmth and connection that would echo forever in the cosmos. In honoring Sila's final wish, the Verian Council was left to question the importance of experiences they had long dismissed, while Sila's legacy, her courage to bridge alien and human, would inspire generations to come. Her story became a testament to the power of defying boundaries, of seeking to understand life in all its raw, imperfect beauty, no matter how alien. The Verian capital buzzed with an uneasy energy in the weeks following Sila's passing. Her story had swept through the galaxy, an unprecedented tale of courage and defiance that struck a chord with beings from dozens of star systems. Verians were unaccustomed to such intensely personal acts. Reproduction, death, even love were often handled with clinical precision. Yet Sila's last wish had cast these customs in a new, vulnerable light. In the sterile halls of the Galactic Research Institute, Dr. Tanda Vox remained in his office late into the night, transfixed by the data Sila had left behind. Her work on quantum mechanics, though unfinished, seemed to hint at groundbreaking discoveries. Equations danced across his screen, complex and enigmatic, almost as if they were encoded with her final thoughts. But it wasn't only her science that haunted him. Sila's bold desire to experience human reproduction, to connect in the most intimate way, forced him to consider. Had they misunderstood what it meant to be alive? As Dr. Vox scrolled through Sila's old notes, a notification flashed across his screen. A report from Earth's Galactic Embassy. He opened the file, his heart jolting as he read the headline. Unexpected development in Verian human hybridization case. Dr. Vox's pulse quickened. He knew that the Council had granted Sila's request as an isolated act of compassion, certain that it would produce no lasting outcome. But as he read, it became clear that something unexpected had occurred. According to the report, Sila's genetic data was showing signs of cell replication. Verian cells, fused with those of a human origin, had begun a unique developmental process. The hybrid embryo was forming, its DNA an impossible fusion of Verian and human, a product of Sila's dying wish. Dr. Vox leaned back, stunned. The implications were staggering. This embryo was an unprecedented fusion of two entirely different species, something previously thought impossible. Verian reproductive laws didn't even address hybridization. It was so rare, so improbable, that it had never been considered. His mind raced as he wondered about the child this could bring forth, a child with both Verian intellect and the deep emotional bonds of humanity. He called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. In a vast, domed chamber, council members from dozens of interstellar nations gathered, their holographic projections flickering into view as their faces registered varying degrees of shock and intrigue at the data Dr. Vox presented. This hybrid, this child, Dr. Vox began, his voice steady but filled with conviction, could be the first step in a new chapter of evolution, a bridge between our worlds. The council members exchanged concerned glances, their thoughts as varied as the galaxies they represented. The Verian chairman, a silver-skinned elder with a voice as cold as steel, finally spoke. This was never intended to create life, he said with a chill in his tone. It was a mercy, nothing more. A mercy, yes, Dr. Vox replied, but this embryo exists. Sila's last act has created a life, one that could change everything we know about our place in the universe. Can we so easily discard it? As Dr. Vox's words echoed through the chamber, a murmur spread among the representatives. Some advocated for termination, seeing the embryo as an anomaly, a breach of their controlled evolution. Others, however, spoke in hushed awe, viewing the embryo as a gift, a rare convergence of two worlds whose union could bring forth an entirely new being. The final decision was made only after days of heated debate. It was decided that the embryo would be allowed to develop in a controlled environment under the supervision of a research team. Both Verian and human scientists would collaborate, studying its growth to ensure stability, health, and a gradual adaptation to both Verian and human environments. For the next several months, Dr. Vox was tasked with leading the team that would oversee the embryo's development. He spent countless hours in the sterile lab, watching as the hybrid grew, monitored by a myriad of instruments. To his astonishment, the embryo showed remarkable resilience, its cellular structures adapting to the challenges of two-species biology. As the months passed, it became evident that this was no ordinary child. The hybrid's genetic markers suggested an intelligence far beyond that of either species. Its brain activity remarkably complex even in the early stages of gestation. More astonishingly, there was a spark in its mind, an energetic resonance that Dr. Vox could only describe as pure vitality, as if it had inherited Sila's fierce spirit and determination to live fully. Then, in a rare moment of reflection, Dr. Vox wondered, was it possible that Sila's consciousness, her memories, or her will had somehow imprinted on this being? He looked at the developing child with a strange, almost paternal pride, realizing that perhaps Sila had achieved something no one had foreseen. Through her final wish, she had not only bridged worlds but had also, in a way, ensured that a part of her spirit would live on. One quiet evening, as Dr. Vox stood by the incubation pod, he whispered, "You have no idea who your mother was, little one. But she changed everything. Her life, her courage, her love. I wonder what kind of future you'll create for us." The child's tiny form, still developing in the pod's liquid warmth, seemed to respond, a faint pulsing glow emanating from its body. Dr. Vox watched in awe, sensing that this hybrid child would not just be a bridge between Verians and humans, but would also inherit Sila's tenacity, her unyielding spirit. This new life was both a continuation and a beginning, an echo of Sila's last wish that would ripple out into the stars. The hybrid child grew faster than anyone anticipated. Within weeks, it developed from embryo to a viable infant, and within months, it reached the cognitive and physical abilities of a young child. The Galactic Research Institute buzzed with activity, scientists and researchers poring over every development, while Dr. Vox kept vigil over the young being he had come to see as a piece of Sila's legacy. They named the child Leah, an homage to her mother's name, and a fitting tribute to the bridge between life and alien. Leah's silvery skin and deep green eyes were unmistakably Verian, but her rounded features and the warmth in her expressions were human. Every day, she revealed something extraordinary, a new way of perceiving, learning, connecting. But it was the night of her first word that shook Dr. Vox to his core. Leah was just over a year old, though she had the mental agility of a Verian teenager. One evening, she looked up from a starlight simulation that Dr. Vox had set up to teach her about the galaxy. Her eyes flickered with recognition, as though something had unlocked deep within her. "Mama," she whispered, her gaze unwavering as she looked straight into Dr. Vox's eyes. The words startled him, nearly sending a chill down his spine. He had never told her about Sila. He had waited until she was ready to understand the complex history behind her existence. And yet here she was, speaking as if she knew something that no one had told her. "Leah," he asked softly, gathering his composure. How did you know that word?" Leah tilted her head, her eyes shimmering with a glint of innocence and wisdom far beyond her years. "She's here," she replied, her voice calm, almost matter-of-fact. "In the stars." Dr. Vox felt the hairs on his arms rise. Leah's intuition bordered on the surreal, and in that moment, he sensed that perhaps a part of Sila's essence had indeed lived on in this child. Or maybe he thought this was simply the way of the universe, allowing fragments of lost voices to echo through new life. He decided to begin telling Leah about her mother. He spoke of Sila's fierce intelligence, her drive to unlock the mysteries of the universe, her unyielding spirit in the face of her illness, and perhaps most importantly, her final wish, which had given Leah life. "You're here because she believed that connecting with others, with humanity, would make her life complete, he told her, watching her carefully for a response. She broke all the rules so that you could live, Lia. Lia was silent, absorbing each word with an intensity that was rare for any child, Verian or human. She looked up at him with a gaze that held both gratitude and a quiet determination. I want to be like her, Lia whispered. I want to know more about everything. And indeed, as Lia grew, her curiosity only intensified. She began surpassing all expectations, showing not only a keen intellect, but also an uncanny empathy, a trait rare among Verians. She could sense emotions in a room, recognize unspoken thoughts, and even seem to understand the motivations behind them. She was a natural at bridging worlds, as if she was driven by an instinct to unify, to understand. This rare gift made Lia a curiosity not just in the lab, but across Verian society. News of her remarkable abilities spread, and soon the media wanted to feature her as the first hybrid child, a symbol of intergalactic unity. The Council, though still wary, saw her as a potential bridge for peace and curiosity between species, a diplomatic asset who could embody the future they hoped for. One day, Dr. Vox invited Ryden, the human who had been part of Sila's last wish, to meet Lia. By now, Ryden had become an advocate for interspecies connection, drawn to Lia's story and the unexpected bond he felt with Sila's memory. When he arrived, he saw Lia seated in a garden of shimmering Verian crystals, studying each stone as if they held secrets only she could hear. He felt a pang of awe and wonder, seeing this child who held pieces of both him and Sila. "Hello, Lia," he said gently, his voice thick with emotion. Lia looked up, her emerald gaze meeting his, and she smiled warmly. "Hello, Ryden." She reached for his hand, as though sensing the complex emotions he carried. "I know who you are," she said, the calmness of her voice catching him off guard. Ryden felt his breath catch. You do?" Lia nodded. "I think I feel you," she said, choosing her words carefully. "The way I feel her, like you're both connected to me in here." She placed a small hand over her chest, her expression open and curious. Ryden's heart swelled. He could feel the unspoken legacy of Sila in the space between them, in this extraordinary child who held fragments of both their worlds. In that moment, he felt Sila's presence as well, as if her spirit had woven itself into the fabric of their connection. Over the next months, Lia continued to excel in her studies, showing a unique ability to merge Verian and human sciences, art, and philosophy. She became known as a visionary, a prodigy who could find new answers to old questions. Yet her ambition was not simply to gain knowledge, but to foster a deeper unity between Verians and humans. Finally, on the eve of her third Earth year, Lia addressed the Council, a remarkable achievement for one so young. Her speech was broadcast across multiple star systems, watched by Verians, humans, and beings from dozens of other races. In her clear, unwavering voice, Lia spoke of her mother's final wish and how it had shaped her own path. "My mother dreamed of connecting with humanity," she said, "of reaching beyond the boundaries of her life. Her courage gave me life, and in honoring her wish, I will dedicate my life to honoring both sides of my heritage." As her speech concluded, the council members, scientists, and intergalactic delegates erupted in applause, moved by her words and the symbolic power she now represented. Lia's story spread beyond the council halls, and she became a symbol of hope, of unity, and of the relentless pursuit of knowledge and connection. As she walked away from the podium, Dr. Vox met her with a proud smile. He knew that Sila would be proud too, that her legacy had not only brought new life into the universe, but also planted the seeds of a new era. And though Lia was just beginning her journey, her mother's wish had already rippled out across the stars, inspiring countless others to seek connection, to bridge worlds, and to follow their most daring, impossible dreams. Years passed, and Lia grew into a figure of wisdom and influence. She traveled between planets, speaking to both Verian and human audiences, breaking down fears, and bridging the cultural divides that had kept their worlds apart. Yet as her influence spread, so did her inner longing for the one who had made her life possible. Sila's presence remained with her, like a whisper in her heart that grew fainter each year, urging her to search for something she could only sense but never fully reach. One evening, on a quiet visit back to the Verian capital, Liao found herself walking alone through the crystalline gardens where Sila's favorite flowers, luminous star lilies, bloomed under the twin moons. Dr. Vox had arranged the garden to honor her mother's memory, a place that held echoes of Sila's dreams and ambitions. He often said that he felt Sila's spirit here, watching over her daughter as she carried forth her vision. As Liao wandered among the glowing blossoms, Ryden joined her. Over time, he had come to fill the role of a father figure in her life, offering a unique perspective that only he, a human link to Sila's final wish, could provide. "Ryden," she said quietly, brushing her fingers over the soft petals of a star lily. "I feel her here, but I wonder, was her wish truly fulfilled? She never got to live beyond the disease. I am here, but I am not her. Sometimes I feel like a mere fragment of her dream." Ryden placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Leah, Sila's wish wasn't just about bringing life into the world. She wanted to understand humanity, to bridge the gap and know that her existence mattered to more than just her own people. And you've given her that, through your life and everything you've done." But Leah's gaze remained fixed on the stars above. "Still, I feel there's something unfinished." In that moment, the night sky shimmered with a sudden brilliance, the stars seeming to pulse with a strange, unearthly energy. And then, as if in answer to her unspoken call, a luminous form began to take shape among the flowers. It was faint, almost like an apparition, but unmistakably Verian in form. A silver-skinned woman with dark hair and emerald eyes that held a warm, knowing gaze. Leah's breath caught as she recognized the figure. "Mother." The apparition nodded, her gaze softening as it fell upon her daughter. "Leah," she whispered, her voice like a gentle breeze that caressed Leah's face. "I have watched you from beyond the veil, my child. I am here because your spirit called to mine." Leah felt tears prickling at her eyes. "I always hoped I would meet you, even just once. There is so much I wanted to ask you." Sila's image smiled, serene and gentle. "My wish was to live beyond my own limits, and I did through you. You have become more than I ever dreamed possible, Leah. Through you, I understand both the courage of my own people and the compassion of humanity." Leah stepped forward, her heart pounding. "But I feel unfinished. There's still a part of me searching, something that calls to me from across the stars." Sila's expression grew tender as she lifted a hand, the light of her form shimmering like stardust. "It is only natural, my love. The search for connection, for meaning, is the heartbeat of all life. That journey will be with you always, as it was with me. But remember, your legacy is not defined by the final destination. It is in the lives you touch along the way." Ryden watched in quiet awe, standing a respectful distance behind Leah. He knew this moment was for her, a gift that he could never understand fully but would always treasure. Sila's form began to fade, her light softening into the twinkling glow of the star lilies around her. "I must go now, but I am proud of you, Leah. You have given my life new meaning. Continue your journey, and know that I am with you, always." As her mother's image faded back into the stars, Leah felt a peace settle over her heart, filling the emptiness that had shadowed her for so long. She looked to the sky, where a single star pulsed brighter than the rest, and whispered, "Thank you, Mother." Ryden stepped forward, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "She's always with you, Leah. She's part of the universe now. And so are you." In the years that followed, Leah dedicated herself to expanding the legacy her mother had begun, pioneering new research into interspecies empathy and communication, creating schools and alliances between worlds, and mentoring countless young minds who dreamed of unity among the stars. Under her guidance, both humans and Verians prospered, connected by a bond that had once seemed impossible but was now stronger than ever. And though she continued to travel across galaxies and forge new paths, Leah often returned to the Star Lily Garden, feeling her mother's presence in the quiet beauty of the flowers and the stars above. She knew that her mother's wish had indeed been fulfilled, and that Sila was the embodiment of that final, hopeful desire, a bridge between worlds, a living testament to courage, love, and the undying connection between mother and child. As Leah gazed up at the starry sky one last time, she felt the universe itself whisper back to her, a promise that she, and the legacy of her mother, would shine on forever.